Bolivia rests deep in the center of the South American continent, a nation of dramatic contrasts and profound history. It is a land where the towering, snow-capped peaks of the Andes Mountains give way to the vast, arid Altiplano, or high plain, which in turn descends into the humid, sprawling lowlands of the Amazon basin. This diverse geography has been the stage for a long and often turbulent human story. People have inhabited these varied landscapes for millennia, adapting to the thin air of the highlands and the dense foliage of the rainforests, creating societies that have left an indelible mark on the land and its culture. The story of Bolivia is a long arc, connecting the sophisticated ancient civilizations that once thrived here with the complex political and social dynamics of the modern era. This history is not a distant, dusty chronicle. It is a living force that continues to shape the daily lives of its people. The legacy of great empires, the trauma of colonial exploitation, the hard-won fight for independence, the persistent struggle for social justice. From the enigmatic ruins of Tiwanaku, a pre-Inca metropolis near the shores of Lake Titicaca, to the rise of the powerful Inca Empire that later dominated the region, the arrival of the Spanish in the 1600s marked a violent and transformative turning point. Long before the arrival of Europeans, the high plains of what is now Bolivia were home to a major ancient civilization. Near the southern shores of Lake Titicaca, Tiwanaku emerged as a major ceremonial and administrative center around 400 AD. For over 6 centuries it flourished, becoming the heart of a powerful state across the southern Andes. Tiwanaku's people were master architects and stonemasons. Monumental stone gateways, sprawling temple complexes, intricate public buildings. Their society relied on sophisticated high-altitude agriculture, farming potatoes, quinoa, other hardy crops. Using raised fields and irrigation systems, they domesticated llamas, alpacas, used for meat, wool for textiles, and transporting goods. This stability let their culture thrive. Artisans produced distinctive pottery, textiles, stone carvings, often showing the staff god. Extensive trade networks spread their influence to the highlands, coastal regions, and the tropical lowlands, creating shared cultural and religious zones. Around 1000 AD, Tiwanaku declined, likely from prolonged drought and internal social pressures. The region fragmented into competing Aymara kingdoms. The cultural legacy endured. Religious beliefs, artistic styles, agricultural knowledge. The ruins of Tiwanaku stand today as a testament. In the 15th century, the Inca expanded from the north. Based in Cusco, they conquered the Aymara and incorporated the region into Tawantinsuyu. The region was Kulasuyu to the Inca. The Inca imposed Quichua, a system of governance, and their state religion. While often blending local customs and deities, they built roads connecting the Bolivian highlands, moving armies, administrators, goods, and information. The intricate and well-ordered world of the Inca Empire was shattered in the 1530s, with the arrival of a small but determined force of Spanish conquistadors led by Francisco Pizarro. Steel weapons, horses' diseases, to which the native population had no immunity. The Spanish swiftly decapitated the Inca leadership and began the systematic conquest of their vast territories. The lands of the Altiplano, Alto Peru, or Upper Peru, were subdued and incorporated into the sprawling viceroyalty of Peru with its administrative center in Lima. This conquest marked the beginning of nearly 300 years of colonial rule, a period that would irrevocably transform the social, economic, and cultural landscape of the region. Imposing a new language, a new religion, and a new and often brutal economic order. The defining event of the Spanish colonial period in Alto Peru occurred in 1545 with the astonishing discovery of a mountain fabulously rich in silver ore. This mountain, located near the city of Potosi, was named the Cerro Rico, or Rich Hill. The silver that poured from its mines would become the financial engine of the Spanish Empire for centuries, funding its European wars, fueling a global trade network, turning Potosi into one of the largest and wealthiest cities in the world. The saying, "worth a Potosi," entered the Spanish language as a synonym for unimaginable wealth. However, this immense fortune was built upon a foundation of ruthless exploitation and immense human suffering. To extract the silver from the depths of the Cerro Rico, the Spanish colonial authorities revived and vastly expanded a pre-Columbian labor system known as the Mita. Under this system of forced labor, tens of thousands of indigenous men were conscripted from communities across the Andes and forced to travel, often with their families, to work in the perilous and toxic conditions of the Potosi mines. They toiled for months on end in dark, narrow shafts, cave-ins, lung disease from dust and mercury fumes, brutal overwork. The Mita system was devastating for indigenous communities, tearing families apart, depopulating entire regions. By the turn of the 19th century, discontent with Spanish rule was simmering throughout the Americas. The Creoles, despite their relative wealth and privilege, resented the political power monopolized by officials sent from Spain. They were increasingly influenced by revolutionary ideas of liberty and self-determination. From North America and from Europe, in Alto Peru, this frustration, combined with long-standing indigenous grievances, fueled a growing desire for independence. The fight for liberation was a long, bloody, and arduous struggle that lasted for more than 15 years. Patriots organized guerrilla armies that waged a relentless war against the Spanish royalist forces. The royalists were determined to hold on to the valuable territory and its silver wealth. The tide finally turned with the intervention of two of South America's most celebrated liberators, Simón Bolívar and his most trusted general, Antonio José de Sucre. After securing victories in neighboring regions, their armies marched into Alto Peru and delivered the final blows to the remaining Spanish garrisons. On August 6, 1825, a constituent assembly gathered in the city of Chuquisaca, later renamed Sucre, and declared independence from Spain. In a gesture of gratitude, the leaders chose to name the new country Bolivia in honor of Simón Bolívar. Antonio José de Sucre was appointed as its first president, tasked with building a stable nation from the ashes of war. The dawn of independence brought optimism and hope for a new era of freedom and self-governance. The new republic was founded on liberal ideals, with a constitution that promised rights and representation. However, the reality of nation-building proved far more difficult than the founders had envisioned. The long wars for independence had devastated the economy, particularly the mining industry. The country was left with a depleted treasury and a fractured political landscape. Deep social hierarchies inherited from the colonial era remained largely intact. A small Creole elite continued to dominate political and economic life, while the indigenous majority remained largely marginalized, impoverished, and excluded from meaningful participation in the new state. The internal weaknesses of the young Bolivian Republic made it vulnerable to conflicts with its more powerful and politically stable neighbors. The War of the Pacific erupted in 1879. Bolivia-Peru, Bolivia's ally Chile, the opponent, a dispute over control of the Atacama Desert. Bolivia's military was ill-prepared, outmatched by modern Chilean forces. Decisive defeats on land at sea. Bolivia suffered a devastating loss. The 1884 treaty forced Bolivia to cede the coastal province, the Litoral, to Chile. National trauma: Bolivia became landlocked, severed access to maritime trade and the Pacific Ocean. The loss of its coastline had profound consequences for economic development and the national psyche. Being landlocked created logistical and financial barriers to international trade, isolating the country and hindering growth for generations. The memory of the lost coast, El Mar Cautivo, became part of national identity, fueling a persistent sense of grievance and a diplomatic quest to regain access to the ocean that continues today. A few decades later, 1932 to 1935, against Paraguay over the Gran Chaco, largely uninhabited, supposedly oil-rich. 3 years of brutal trench warfare in a harsh, arid climate. Bolivia was once again defeated, losing a vast swath of territory. Amidst these external conflicts, a new powerful elite dominated Bolivia's economy and politics. The silver mines of Potosi declined, vast deposits of tin were discovered. Bolivia became a leading tin producer. The boom did not bring widespread prosperity. Wealth concentrated in a tiny group, the tin barons. Simón Patiño, Carlos Aramayo, Mauricio Hochschild. They built colossal fortunes, controlled the nation's most valuable resource, and wielded immense influence over the government. This powerful mining oligarchy, La Rosca, created a state within a state. They controlled newspapers, banks, and railroads. Their economic power allowed them to manipulate politicians and dictate national policy to serve their own interests. The tin barons lived in extravagant luxury, often spending more time in Europe than in Bolivia. Miners endured horrific working conditions and brutal repression when they attempted to organize. The stark contrast between immense wealth and grinding poverty created a powder keg of social unrest, fostering a radical political consciousness among the miners and setting the stage for a revolutionary upheaval that would soon shake the nation to its core. The profound social and economic inequalities fostered by the tin oligarchy, combined with the national humiliation of the Chaco War, created fertile ground for radical change. The war had exposed the incompetence of the traditional ruling class and had brought together men from all corners of the country. In the trenches, indigenous peasants, urban workers, middle-class intellectuals, forging a new sense of shared national identity and grievance. In the years following the war, new political movements emerged, demanding fundamental reforms. This growing discontent culminated in the Bolivian National Revolution of 1952, one of the most significant social transformations in 20th-century Latin American history. A popular uprising, led by the Nationalist Revolutionary Movement, the MNR, overthrew the military government that protected the interests of the tin barons. The 1952 revolution unleashed a torrent of sweeping reforms aimed at dismantling the old oligarchic state and creating a more inclusive and equitable society. One of the most significant acts was the nationalization of the country's major tin mines, wresting control of Bolivia's primary source of wealth from the tin barons and placing it under Comibol. Another revolutionary decree was the implementation of universal suffrage, which granted the right to vote to all adults, including indigenous people and women. Perhaps the most profound change was the agrarian reform of 1953. This policy broke up the large semi-feudal estates, or latifundios, and redistributed the land to hundreds of thousands of rural peasant families, primarily indigenous communities. And ending the traditional dominance of the landed aristocracy, the revolution sought to build a new, modern Bolivia, one where the state played a central role in the economy and where the benefits of the nation's resources would be shared more broadly among its people. However, the revolutionary project was fraught with difficulties and internal contradictions. The MNR government struggled to manage the newly nationalized mines, which were plagued by declining ore grades and labor unrest. The United States, concerned about the left-leaning direction of the revolution during the Cold War, offered financial aid but also exerted pressure to moderate its policies. Political infighting within the ruling party weakened its unity and resolve. This persistent instability created an opening for the armed forces, which had been rebuilt and professionalized with U.S. assistance. In 1964, the military staged a coup, ousting the MNR and ushering in a long and dark period of authoritarian rule that would last for nearly 2 decades, characterized by a succession of military dictatorships, human rights abuses, and political repression. The long night of military rule in Bolivia, which saw numerous coups and repressive regimes, finally came to an end in 1982 with a peaceful transition to democracy. The return to democratic governance was a moment of great hope. But the country faced enormous challenges, including a severe economic crisis characterized by hyperinflation and a massive foreign debt. In the years that followed, successive democratically elected governments implemented neoliberal economic policies. They privatized state-owned enterprises, mining sector privatizations, hydrocarbon sector privatizations. They opened the economy to foreign investment. While these policies stabilized the economy, they also led to increased social inequality. That inequality sparked widespread popular protest from unions, from coca growers, and from a newly energized indigenous movement. This growing social mobilization fundamentally reshaped Bolivian politics at the turn of the 21st century. Indigenous communities demanded greater political representation. They demanded cultural recognition and control over natural resources. That wave of protest culminated in the historic 2005 election of Evo Morales. Evo Morales, an Aymara coca farmer and union leader, became Bolivia's first indigenous head of state. His victory was both symbolic and substantive. Morales' government, under the Movement for Socialism, MAS, embarked on a project to refound Bolivia. A new constitution, approved in 2009, redefined Bolivia as a plurinational state. It formally recognized the existence and rights of the nation's 36 indigenous peoples. His administration reasserted state control over key sectors, most notably by nationalizing the country's natural gas reserves. Increased state revenues from hydrocarbons, buoyed by a commodities boom, funded extensive social programs. Those programs significantly reduced poverty and inequality and won broad support, particularly among rural and indigenous populations. His long tenure was also marked by increasing political polarization and controversies over his efforts to extend his time in office. Today, on 2025, December 10th, Bolivia is at another crossroads, navigating the legacy of the Morales era. The nation's political landscape remains deeply divided over the economic model, over the role of the state, and over the very definition of its national identity. The economy remains heavily reliant on the extraction of natural resources like natural gas and lithium. Bolivia faces the challenge of diversification and sustainable development in an era of global climate change. Despite progress, deep-seated issues persist: poverty, regionalism, and social inclusion. Bolivia's story continues to be one of resilience and struggle, a negotiation between diverse peoples and a rich, challenging history, as it seeks a more stable, just, and prosperous shared future.